Welcome. Today we will discuss about the amazing potency of reading and hearing the book called Srimad Bhagavatam. And we will start with the reading of a text from Srimad Bhagavatam. And I will actually share the screen so that you can also see. And before I offer obeisances, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Soham ninam shula sukaya dukam mahad gatanam viramaya tasya pravartaye bhagavatam puranam yad ahasakshat bhagavan rishibhya. And the translation goes, let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavata Purana, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the personality of Godhead for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries for the sake of very little pleasure. Purport. The sage Maitreya proposed to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam because it was especially compiled and traditionally comes down in the disciplic succession for the solution of all the problems of human society. Only one who is fortunate can have the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees of the Lord. Under the spell of material energy, the living entities are entrapped in the bondage of many difficulties simply for the sake of a little bit of material happiness. They engage in fruitive activities, not knowing the implications. Under the false impression that the body is the self, the living entities foolishly relate to so many false attachments. They think that they can engage with materialistic paraphernalia forever. This gross misconception of life is so strong that a person suffers continually, life after life, under the external energy of the Lord. If one comes in contact with the book Bhagavatam, as well as with the devotee Bhagavata, who knows what the Bhagavatam is, then such a fortunate man gets out of the material entanglement. Therefore, Sri Maitreya Muni, out of compassion for the suffering man in the world, proposes to speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam first and last. So a very beautiful verse and purport. And I will say a few things about it, how Srimad Bhagavatam is actually the book that can solve all our problems. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchanga Gorange Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this verse and purport, we can actually read that human society actually has many problems. Many problems, and people actually are trying to solve these problems. They are trying to become free from the misery, from suffering. However, they do not really know what is the real solution. And there is also another verse in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which goes like this. Dihapatya kalatradishu atma sanyesha satsapi tisham pramatoni danam pashyam api na pashyati. And this verse explains that people who are devoid of Atma Tattva. And what is Atma Tattva? Atma Tattva is actually the knowledge of real self, or the knowledge of the soul, the nature of the soul. So people who have no knowledge about the soul, about their real nature, spiritual nature, such people don't make any questions about the real problems of life. What are actually the real problems of life? And they actually are very attached to the fallible soldiers. And the fallible soldiers are their own body, children, home, wife or husband. And although they have sufficient experience in life of many difficulties and many miserable things that happen to them, still they do not understand that they are coming closer and closer to their inevitable destruction. So this is really the reality for a person who is a materialist in this world. And for such people, it is another of their inclinations, or another of their characteristics is Shrotavyadi nirajendra nrinam santi sahasrashaha apashyatam atmatatvam griheshu grihamedinam. So such people are actually very much engrossed, absorbed in their material life, in their family life, between husband and wife and children, and how to maintain them, how to keep the status quo with all the difficulties which are always coming. And such people actually have many different topics that they are interested about, that they inquire about, that they listen about, but they do not inquire into the topics of Atma Tattva, or the topics of the ultimate truth. So this is actually the great difficulty of the present day society, people in general. And the end result is that the anxiety and the miserable conditions that people are experiencing are only increasing day by day. And here, of course, comes Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, it's a really mystical book. It's a magical book. Why? Because Srimad Bhagavatam is actually all about the supreme absolute truth. And there is actually also another verse which is explaining a little more about the nature of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it goes like this. if I can remember right now. Yes, I have it here. This is the second verse of the first chapter. Yes. Dharma projita kaita votra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vidyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapotrayonmulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaparat Ishvara Sadhyo Hrita Varudyate Takritibi Shrushru Shubhi Tatkshanat. And let me tell you the translation of this amazing verse. It goes like this. That this Bhagavata Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, is completely rejecting all the religious activities which are materially motivated, and it propounds, it gives the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees, by those people who are pure in heart, who are fully pure in heart, who are not envious. Now, what is the highest truth? The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. And such truth uproots the threefold miseries. So there is more, but this was the most important point from this verse, that this Srimad Bhagavatam is actually giving the absolute truth, and the potency of this knowledge about the absolute truth is that it extinguishes the illusion, and with this it uproots all miseries. So this is something really, really amazing, because the problems that we are experiencing in this world, in our lives, are coming to us. Our perception is clouded. It's actually, from one point we can say, that it is under the illusion that we are experiencing these miseries and suffering. Although these sufferings are real, yet still, from another point of view, when a person knows the truth, the pain goes away. It is something amazing. So it is something that I need to give you some stories to illustrate this point of people who actually really experience this. So one story that I would like to give is story about Narada Muni. Narada Muni is a great saintly person. And when he was just a little child, just like 5-year-old child, he was living with his mother, and his mother was very simple lady. She was actually doing menial service. And at one occasion, a group of great sages came to their town. And Narada's mother was engaged in serving these great sages. And at the same time, he was also with her all the time, and he was also helping her to serve the sages. And as he was like coming and going, he saw that these sages, they were Bhakti Vedantas. So they were actually Bhakti yogis, the devotees. They were absorbed in hearing and chanting Srimad Bhagavatam and other Krishna Katha. So they were fully blissful. They were fully blissful. And Narada Muni, as a little child, he was attracted because he saw these pure, blissful sages. So he stayed with them, and he also started hearing their talks. And in this way, he's starting hearing the topics from Srimad Bhagavatam, the topics about the absolute truth. And in this way, he very, very quickly advanced in spiritual life. And this advancement actually was tested very soon, when one day his mother went out to milk the cow, and a poisonous snake bit her in the leg, and unfortunate mother passed away. So Narada was at that point only 5-year-old child, and you could say this is a tragedy, this is a disaster, and he had nobody else in this world except for this mother who passed away. But how did he react? Because he was so full of this supreme knowledge, the supreme truth, he understood that actually this was an opportunity for him, that now he can leave home and he can go, he can start traveling like a mendicant and just absorb himself in thoughts of the Supreme Lord. And this is also what he did. He was just fully absorbed in chanting and hearing and remembering the Supreme Lord, and he attained the supreme perfection in that same life. So we can see, because he was so surcharged with this spiritual knowledge, with this spiritual truth from his hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, from his teachers, he didn't experience the misery and the suffering that an ordinary child would experience if his mother would pass away. Then another example, just the contrary, it's about Chitraketu. This is a great king who had difficulty in obtaining a son. But finally, he got blessings of great sages and he got a son. However, he was not destined to enjoy life as a father, because the many, many other queens who could not have children with him, his wives, poisoned this little boy because they were so envious of the queen who had the child. And again, Chitraketu was without a child, and he almost got blind from pain. He fainted. He couldn't speak. He was just like, the tears were just like flowing from his eyes. And at that time, the great sages came, Narada Muni and Atri Muni, and they gave him this spiritual knowledge from Srimad Bhagavatam. And when he heard this spiritual knowledge, his pain went away, because he understood everything in the proper perspective, from the spiritual vision. He got that spiritual vision. This is what we get when we listen to Srimad Bhagavatam. And so he was able to give up his lamentation. And not only this, but he actually became so inspired and enthused that he devoted himself to a spiritual life. And he got initiated into chanting sacred mantra. And then very, very quickly, he achieved amazing spiritual success. So here we have two of these examples. And then there are so many other examples from contemporary devotees. Like one example I can give from one of the teachers, spiritual teachers in our society, Sachinandana Swami. He was telling that at one point he had a very, very painful condition his health was he was in really bad shape. He had a very painful medical condition, and it was so bad that it was practically intolerable. And the only way he could actually tolerate it, it was that he just read Srimad Bhagavatam nonstop. Because when he started reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and when he absorbed his mind in Srimad Bhagavatam, the pain and the misery went away. And this is also what is, we can actually read in Srimad Bhagavatam. There are many, many verses which speak about this, and also in Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, we can read, Machita madgata prana bodhayantah parasparam katayantash chamam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. And this is the verse that speaks about the devotees, the pure devotees, who are constantly serving the Lord with devotion. And not only that, but they are constantly engaged in discussing about Krishna with one another, like reading Srimad Bhagavatam and other books about Krishna. And they experience great bliss from conversing with one another and enlightening one another. So all the miseries go away when we are in touch with this pure spiritual knowledge, when we are in touch with Krishna. Krishna drives away all misery and brings the highest possible bliss. So therefore, I would like to encourage every one of you for the upcoming new year. I would like to share with you my best wishes for your happy new year. And I desire for you that you make this year a year in which you will regularly absorb yourself in reading, hearing, and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam and other Krishna Katha in the association of loving devotees.